So we're on 4:11:31, huh? Okay. Let me find the page here. Okay, how's the volume here? Am I still too loud for you guys? Okay. Okay, so we'll be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto sorry. Somehow, it's on the wrong chapter. Oh, there it is. Okay. So we'll be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 11, text number 32. There goes my volume. I'm a little too quiet. A little too... Anyway, this is okay. Swayam Bhuvamanu advises Dhruva Maharaj. This is the name of the chapter. Is that the right chapter? Okay, because I thought... Oh, because that's not the whole title, because it advises Dhruva Maharaj to stop fighting, right? That's the name of the whole chapter. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so we'll be reading from text 31. But before we begin, we'll offer obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Alright, so what's the... Do you know what the meter is here, Balaram? Is it Bhagavad Gita or is it... Alright. Samyacha rosam bhadram te pratipam shresham param shrutena bhuyasya rajan agadena yatamayam samyacha rosam bhadram te pratipam shreyasam param shrutena bhuyasya rajan agadena yatamayam samyacha rosham bhadram te pratipam shreyasam param Shrutena Bhuyasya Rajan Agadena Yatamayam. Please chant. Samyacha Rocham Bhadram Te Pratipam Shreyasam Param Dena Buddha Rajam Agadena Maya Para Samyacha Rosam Bhadram Te Shrutena Bhuyasa Rajan. Samyacha Rosam Bhadram Te Nitanam Param Shrutena Bhuyasa Rajan. Anyone else? Samyacha Rosam Bhadram Te Nitanam Shreyasam Param Tena Bhuyasa Rajan Agadena Maya Param. Okay, before we get into the purport, I need my phone back because I have some notes on it. If you want the book to read along, you can take the book. Okay. Anyone else want the book? Okay. Cool. Okay, so we'll do the word for word, then we'll do translation and purport. Samyacha, just control. Rosam, anger. Bhadram, all good fortune. Te, to you, Pratipam, enemy, Shreyasam, of all goodness, Param, the foremost, Shrutena, by hearing, Bhuyasa, constantly, Rajan, my dear king, Agadena, by medicinal treatment, Yata, as, Amayam, disease. Srila Prabhupada's translation. My dear king, just consider what I have said to you, which will act as medicinal treatment upon disease. Control your anger, for anger is the foremost enemy on the path of spiritual realization. I wish all good fortune for you. Please follow my instructions. So we'll read Srila Prabhupada's purport here. Purport. Dhruva Maharaj was a liberated soul, and actually he was not angry with anyone. But because he was the ruler, it was his duty to become angry for some time in order to keep law and order in the state. His brother, Uttama, was without fault, yet he was killed by one of the yakshas. It was the duty of Dhruva Maharaj to kill the offender, life for life, because Dhruva was the king. When the challenge came, Dhruva Maharaj fought vehemently and punished the yakshas sufficiently. But anger is such that if one increases it, it increases unlimitedly. In order that Dhruva Maharaj's kingly anger not exceed the limit, Manu was kind enough to check his grandson. Dhruva Maharaj could understand the purpose of his grandfather, and he immediately stopped the fighting. The words Shrutena Bhuyasya, by constant hearing, are very important in this verse. By constantly hearing about devotional service, one can check the force of anger, which is detrimental for the process of devotional service. Srila Maharaj Parikshit said that the constant hearing of the pastimes of the Lord is the panacea for all material diseases. Everyone, therefore, should hear about the Supreme Personality Godhead constantly. By hearing, one can always remain in equilibrium, and thus his progress in spiritual life will not be hampered. Dhruva Maharaj's becoming angry with the miscreants was quite appropriate. There is a short story in this connection about a snake who became a devotee upon the instructions of Narada Muni, who instructed him not to bite anymore. Since ordinarily a snake's business is to fatally bite other living entities, as a devotee he was forbidden to do so. Unfortunately, people took advantage of this non-violence on the part of the snake, especially the children, who began to throw stones at him. He did not bite anyone, however, because it was the instruction of his spiritual master. After a while, when the snake met his spiritual master, Narada, he complained, "I have given up the bad habit of biting innocent living entities, but they are mistreating me by throwing stones at me." Upon hearing this, Narada Muni instructed him, "Don't bite, but do not forget to expand your hood as if you were going to bite. Then they will go away." Similarly, a devotee is always non-violent. He is qualified with all good characteristics. But in the material world, when there is mischief made by others, he should not forget to become angry, at least for the time being, in order to drive away the miscreants. Om Jnanatamrandasya Yaranjana Shalakaya Chakshun Mitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master is opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. Offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. Thank you very much, Prabhu, for giving me the opportunity to speak here and purify myself, and hopefully you'll pray that I can say something that will be useful and instructive here. There's some interesting points in this purport, actually. So I'll go through a few points in Srila Prabhupada's purport here. One thing that's interesting in the beginning of this purport, in the first paragraph, is Srila Prabhupada is talking about this idea of anger. And one particular sentence he says is that anger is such that if one increases it, it increases unlimitedly. So this is kind of an interesting statement. It's food for thought, as they might say, and it should be something we should keep in mind, actually, because anger is a very dangerous thing. And Srila Prabhupada says here that it just goes on increasing and increasing. And generally speaking, for us conditioned souls, this anger is not a very constructive thing. We are not very familiar how to use anger for good purposes. Like Dhruva Maharaj, actually, as Srila Prabhupada explains here, is actually, Dhruva Maharaj is to some extent using his anger appropriately. But for us conditioned souls, at least speaking for myself, we should be very, very cautious with this anger, because often it is not coming from a spiritual platform. It is coming from a material platform, from our sense gratification being somehow interrupted by somebody else. So it is important that we can understand this, that we should check this force of anger as quickly as possible. It's not that we should go on increasing and increasing our anger, because it won't end up good for us. It won't end up good for us or for anyone else. So it's an important concept here. Another thing that should be noted on this occasion is that Dhruva Maharaj was prevented from descending into further anger by his grandfather. So an important thing when we're angry, or even when we're not angry, is that we're able to actually listen to the advice of others. It's not that Dhruva Maharaj, he was angry, and then Manu came and instructed him, and Dhruva Maharaj just told him mind his own business. But actually Dhruva Maharaj had much respect for Swayambhuva Manu, understood that actually his instructions were for his benefit. Srila Prabhupada here, in the translation, he says that with another mic, yeah. Anyways, so another important, quite important point of the purport here is Srila Prabhupada is explaining how to check this force of anger. That's kind of Srila Prabhupada has interesting angles of approaching problems, actually, because he's coming from the level of transcendence. He's not coming from material level. There's all these anger management classes that are there, and maybe there's something good there, don't get me wrong, but oftentimes they're really making some kind of mental adjustment. This is how you check the force of anger like this. You do this. You count to 10, whatever. These things are helpful. Don't get me wrong, but Srila Prabhupada is approaching it from a whole different platform. And what he's saying here actually is that if one hears about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then one can check this force of anger. Kind of an interesting angle to go about this. So we can think about this a little bit, like how does this practically come about? One way of looking at it is we could say that, okay, by chanting Hare Krishna, by hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by doing these things, then the good qualities of the demigods, they come about. That our good qualities are naturally brought out by association with the holy name, by association with hearing about Krishna. By associating with Krishna and hearing about him, we actually become purified. We develop the qualities that Krishna and his saintly devotees have. So that's one way of looking at it. We could also look at it in a few other ways. Like, as we mentioned earlier, one of the reasons one becomes angry is that their material desires are not fulfilled. You know, it's pretty simple, pretty simple to explain. Maybe I could give an example. You know, just someone they have this road rage. You know, someone takes my parking space. Someone gets in front of me on the freeway or whatever. You know, they've taken my rightful place, and I get angry. So this is one thing. But as one practices Krishna consciousness, hopefully their material desires start to decrease. And so these things that would have made one angry before are not so important, actually. I'd also like to kind of go at another angle here about this this hearing decreasing the anger, is that the devotee should see everything actually happening to him as Krishna's mercy, whether good or bad. You know, okay, Krishna's mercy, I got a nice plate of prasadam. Okay, it's pretty easy to see Krishna's mercy there. But where's Krishna's mercy when you don't get that plate of prasadam? You know, where's Krishna's mercy when you break your leg? You know, or whatever, you know. Where's Krishna's mercy there? So, actually, one should understand philosophically by hearing from the Bhagavatam that even these apparently negative events that are happening to us are coming from Krishna as well. The devotee sees them as, can see them in different ways. He can see them as a small token reaction for all his previous sinful activity that he has performed. So he thinks, well, I've done so many sinful things. You know, what's a whittle? What's breaking my leg? You know, this is very much a token punishment for what I'm doing. Another thing is that we should understand as devotees, or we should maintain the understanding that this material world is not our home. It is not a place of enjoyment. There may be some flickering happiness here, but it is not where we want to stay. So sometimes Krishna may send us reminders, because we tend to get complacent here. As soon as we have some sort of good situation, we think, oh, I can stay here. And, you know, we think, oh, this is very pleasant. But Krishna sends us these little reminders. These little reminders to keep us in the mindset that we actually aren't here in this material world to enjoy. We're actually here in this material world. We should be practicing Krishna consciousness. That should be our main function in this material world. So if one actually has this mindset, then when apparent reversals happen to him or her, then one can become a little less angry, a little less disturbed. Srila Prabhupada says here, one can always remain in equilibrium. So this is a very good state to be in here. So that's another interesting point here. It's made in the third paragraph about Dhruva Maharaj is becoming angry with these miscreants. And Srila Prabhupada saying here, it's actually appropriate. So this is an interesting thing to wrap our head around, because generally people think of anger as a very negative thing. You know, but actually anger can be used properly. Srila Prabhupada speaks about Arjuna, and he said he had said that Krishna, he spoke the whole Bhagavad Gita just to make Arjuna angry. So anyways, that's kind of a funny way of looking at it if you take it just with that sentence. But the idea is that without anger, one cannot fight, one cannot take some sorts of actions. And some of these actions are necessary. You know, sometimes I give the example of I give the example to people who ask about these kinds of things. of police officers. So if I'm robbed, and someone steals my money, someone assaults me or something, I want the police officer to kind of take some pretty swift action against the person who did that to me. I don't want him to be very calm and collected and just kind of like stroll after the person who assaulted me. He should actually do something. So, but the anger should be controlled. You expect the police officer to have some control over his anger too, and not just act willy-nilly. He acts according to the law. So similarly, Dhruva Maharaj, he's acting within his position of the king, that he is punishing these people who killed his innocent brother. But Manu is making sure he doesn't step outside of his constraints as the king, and it doesn't get, as they say, personal. So that Dhruva Maharaj, he just does what is necessary, and he doesn't go over that line and become implicated in sinful activities. So it's interesting position here in this material world, that sometimes the devotees may have to do things that are may be viewed apparently as bad. Dhruva Maharaj is killing all these people or whatever, and we have this example here of the snake, who, even though he was a devotee, he didn't want to hurt anybody, but still he had to show his hoods in order to protect himself. So as devotees, we can't be totally complacent in this world. We have to do some things to protect our society, maintain ourselves, and we lock our doors at night. We're not stupid. We have to do some things in this material world to protect ourselves. There's a nice, see if I can read it verbatim. There's a nice section in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text number 30. And this section, I won't read the verse because it doesn't have to do so much with what we're talking about. But there's a nice section in the purport where Srila Prabhupada is explaining this. He is saying, let me see if I can, right. So, I'll read a little bit of the purport here. So the Prabhupada says here, when a living entity is conditioned, he has two kinds of activities. One is conditional and one is constitutional. As for protecting the body or abiding by the rules of society and state, certainly there are different activities, even for the devotees, in connection with the conditional life, and such activities are called conditional. Besides these, the living entity who is fully conscious of his spiritual nature and is engaged in Krishna consciousness or the devotional service of the Lord has activities which are called transcendental. Such activities are performed in his constitutional position, and they are technically called devotional service. Now in the conditioned state, sometimes devotional service and the conditional service in relation to the body will parallel one another. But then again, sometimes these activities become opposed to one another. As far as possible, a devotee is very cautious so that he does not do anything that could disrupt his wholesome condition. He knows that the perfection in his activities depends on his progressive realization of Krishna consciousness. Sometimes, however, it may be seen that a person in Krishna consciousness commits some act which may be taken to be his most abominable socially or politically, but such a temporary fall down does not disqualify him. In the srimadbhagavatam it is stated that if a person falls down but is wholeheartedly engaged in the transcendental service of the Supreme Lord, the Lord, being situated within his heart, purifies him and excuses him from that abomination. Okay, so there's an interesting point here. So kind of related back to Dhruva Maharaj, we can see that he becomes angry, and Swayambhuva Manu is trying to prevent this anger from kind of disrupting Dhruva Maharaj's continuing practice of devotional service, that he doesn't become overly contaminated by it, that he can still go on with his service. Just sometimes in devotional service we may by necessity, come in contact with things that can disrupt our devotional service. One may become it by, one may go out, just for preaching, like our Bhakta Zakis out in the world preaching on the traveling Sankirtan. And he doesn't have the same shelter of the temple that many of us do right now. But he's taking that risk for Krishna. But still, he should be, he has other devotees there to try to protect him from falling away, being tempted by the things of Maya. So here we can see Swayambhuva Manu, he's protecting Dhruva Maharaj as well from kind of descending into anger and becoming contaminated here. Okay, so one should be very... I think I'll actually take questions at this point here. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns? All right.
Yeah, so you're talking about anger, and sometimes, actually quite often, Prabhupada, within his books, within his lectures, within his letters, so many instructions to so many disciples, which means practically not only were there instructions to his disciples, but there are instructions to his grand disciples, like all of us here.
Yeah.
And, on and on, instructions for generations. But he would say that he would equate preaching with fighting.
Yeah.
He would say you have to go fight with Maya. You have to drop bombs on the laps of the conditioned souls in the form of books. He said it's a war with illusion. When one takes up Krishna consciousness, they are declaring a war with illusory energy. He said so many statements like that. And we could just look up pages of statements, probably, where he says fighting. Preaching means fighting. So my point is that you mentioned this idea that one has to be angry to fight. And generally, devotees are, shanti, peaceful, and, all this type of thing. But maybe you could try to balance that out, this idea of like we're all in the West, especially in the West. It's like a big fight. So we're supposed to be fighting, which means preaching. So maybe you could balance that out. What does that mean? Like, in other words, how are we supposed to be angry? Because without anger, we can't fight, right? So maybe you could...
Yeah, I could think of a little bit. I think there was one Mataji who wrote a letter to Prabhupada kind of on this subject. Because Chief Sister should be books and distribute books. You kind of need to be a little bit pushy. A little bit. Because at least you have to stop the person. Like, at least you have to go that far. You have the courage to go out there and stop the person. Or at a book table, you have to have some determination to disturb the person a little bit. So she was asking Srila Prabhupada about this. Like, I'm supposed to be like, mellow person or whatever. Like, devotees aren't supposed to be, like, what am I supposed to do, And Srila Prabhupada said we should be basically aggressive, aggressive out there, but, kind of calm at home, I'm not using the exact words. But I think some of the words he used were like a lion in the chase and a lamb at home. So, kind of to elaborate a little bit further on maybe going at a different angle on the same point, is that we should be a little bit disturbed by what's going on out there. Okay, we could say, okay, it's Krishna's Maya. Okay, we could say like that. That's one way of looking at it. But also, we should be a little disturbed. We should be a little disturbed that people out there, they're committing all sorts of abominable activities, and not only hurting themselves, but hurting others. I mean, we should be maybe even a little angry about it. Like, hey, like, we got to do something, If we're just like, okay, the world's bad and people are committing sinful activity, and all right, well, let's have another glove jamin, Then, like, what's the impetus for going out there? What's the impetus for saving these people? Like, what's the impetus for distributing books? One has to be a little disturbed with how the material energy is working, how the world is going, you know. If you can see all these activists, all these material activists, I mean, you could say there's some goodness, there's some general thing they want to help people, but there's also this tinge of anger about how the current situation is. That they want to fight the things that they see as wrongs, you know. So I'd say we have to have that little bit of anger with the way things are going now. Otherwise, we'll be too complacent. We'll just be happy to let things go on as they are. Yeah. Anyone else? Any questions or comments? Yeah.
Nice class, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
In the pastime of Narada Muni instructing the snake,
Yeah.
he was, by telling him, he wanted him to expand his hoods but not to really bite.
Yeah.
So, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
One thing I should say is that devotees, one thing I could think about that is the snake is kind of taking a defensive position. He's not really he's not really outwardly, actively going out and going after these innocent people anymore. But he is also defending himself, you know. So we can see, even if you read some stories about the early days, and devotees had to take some sort of measures actually to defend the temples. You know, even here we don't have like crazy stuff, you know, but we lock the doors at night. We are cautious about leaving things out. You know, we take some measures to defend ourselves. You know, so similarly, the snake has to take some sort of defensive measures, but it's not that we go out and start terrorizing the people, our enemies. You know, I don't think that's not really necessarily our program. But we should take the proper measures to ensure we can practice Krishna consciousness in a healthy manner, you know. Anyone else? Any questions or comments? Okay. Mantra SrimadBhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.